righty. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice. People coming in. We'll start at 12. Well, it's actually 105. 105 Eastern. Let everybody get in. And then let me make sure the chat is enabled. This last time. Perfect. If you could drop in the chat where you're located, that'd be great. Let me pull up this. Let me see. Chat working. Okay, perfect. Cleveland. Okay, nice. Seattle. Irvine, nice. And let me pull up the slides. Perfect. And then let me know if you guys can see my screen. Perfect. Can you guys see my screen? Perfect. Some more folks get in. Denison University, nice to meet you. Dallas, Texas, you're right down the street. We're based in Tulsa, right? She's based in Tulsa. I know David's based in Boston. UMD, New York, Arizona, Fort Lauderdale, Houston, Miami, San Diego. We'll actually be in San Diego April 5th through the 7th at the AI show at ASU plus GSV. I think it's like one of the biggest higher ed tech conferences. So if you're in San Diego, most definitely would love to connect. BYU, okay. I was actually at UACE last year. Who is this? David. Nice to see you, David. Man, Conto's at Minnesota. Okay. I used to live in Minnesota for like 10 weeks in 2018. Interned at Wells Fargo there. University of Utah. Okay. I was at UACE. I'm not sure if did we meet Rebecca? Not sure if we met. Judy Cox. Thanks for joining. All right. Give it one more minute and we'll get started. But everybody can see my screen. Dave, you can see my screen, correct?
I got you, man.
All right, cool. Perfect. Perfect. Well, no, hello, everyone, and welcome. So excited to have you for today's fireside chat, Mitigating Higher Ed Risk, the Power of Career Readiness Insights. My name is Leander Howard II. I'm the co-founder and CMO at WriteSea, and I'll be your host for today's conversation. We know how busy your schedules are, so thank you for spending time with us to talk about something that's becoming increasingly critical in higher education. Career readiness is a strategic priority and a risk management tool. We're going to explore how forward-thinking institutions are using career readiness data to identify underprepared students, improve job placement outcomes, and strengthen relationships with employers and alumni. And I'm thrilled to be joined by someone who's been at the center of this movement, David, founder and CEO of uConnect. David's team has worked with over 400 colleges and universities, been around for 10 years, and he brings incredible insight into what's working across the landscape. Before we dive into the questions for David, we want to start by getting to know you a little bit. You know, who's in the room with us today. We have a few poll questions we love for you to answer. Your participation will help us shape the conversation and make sure we're addressing what matters most to you. And also, if you have any questions, throughout the session. Please drop them in the Q&A box, not the chat, so we can keep everything organized and make sure we don't miss anything. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible during the final portion of today's session. With that said, I'm going to introduce David, and then we'll get into the poll questions.
You want me to?
Yeah, I'll let you do it, David. Kick it off.
Yeah.
You can introduce yourself.
So thanks, Leander. It's a pleasure to be here, and appreciate the RightSea team for putting together this conversation, and also for just adding more tailwind to the conversation around the importance of career services and career readiness in higher education. Just a little bit of background on me: started uConnect in 2012, and really focused on helping college universities sort of embed career planning and exploration into the campus culture and into the daily student experience. I started my career in finance, and I was able to launch my career with a small private equity firm in Boston out of UMass Amherst, and I attribute a lot of that to using career services. Throughout my entire 4 years on campus, I probably leveraged every career-related resource on campus while I was an undergrad, and that was really sort of, I think, tied to the fact that I had a pretty strong vision of what I wanted to do upon completion. And so I used career services and benefited tremendously. I ultimately went back to my alma mater about 3 years into my career to recruit students for the private equity firm that I was at, and realized during that visit that most students don't actually use career services, at least not nearly as much as they could or they should. And that to me felt like a really big opportunity for higher ed. And it was around the same time there was a very big and growing conversation around return on investment in education and ROI of a degree. And to me, it was sort of sort of clean and clear in my mind that if students were meaningfully engaged in career planning and exploration throughout their time in higher ed, then they'd be at a minimum more thoughtful, better prepared, more likely to succeed, and see greater ROI from their investment in higher education. So ever since then, that's really been the focus of my professional career, and our work at uConnect is making sure all students have the chance to utilize the resources that they need to succeed. And as Leander mentioned, we work with almost 400 colleges, universities, and very excited that the movement is progressing, but also feel like it's still very early. And there's a lot of opportunity for more investment and more momentum around the conversation for elevating the role of career services and scaling their impact and influence. So thanks again for having me.
No, thank you for joining, David. Really impressed by the things you've done at uConnect. And if you don't know myself, I'll give a brief intro. I'm Leander Howard II, a career services industry expert, marketing strategist, and entrepreneur, on a mission to pretty much revolutionize how job seekers land opportunities and how organizations enhance career services at scale. As the co-founder and CMO of WriteSea, I lead the charge in integrating AI-powered career mobility solutions that help job boards, universities, and companies improve career outcomes and create structured hiring pathways. My journey in career services started in 2020 when I founded my first business called Spark Your Resume, a career coaching firm that helped over 1,000 job seekers secure roles at top companies such as Amazon, Deloitte, and Google. Through hands-on experience with resume optimization, LinkedIn branding, interview coaching, and salary negotiation, I built a reputation as a trusted advisor for job seekers across industries. I've had the privilege of being featured in Afrotech, 85 South Show, Tech is the New Black, and Rolling Out, sharing insights on career development, entrepreneurship, and marketing strategies. Before stepping into the career services space, I did play Division I football at Georgia State University, where I earned 2 bachelors, one in marketing and finance. I think my competitive drive and passion for career development, job market innovation, AI-driven hiring solutions fuels pretty much everything I do. And now we'll get into the polls. So let me see. I'm going to launch the polls. And let me know if it just popped up on you guys' screen. Perfect. The first question is, what best describes your role in higher ed, just to get a sense of, who's on the call today. As mentioned earlier, we'd greatly appreciate if everybody could participate here before we dive into the fireside chat. Our next question is, how confident are you that your institution is effectively tracking student career readiness today? I think this is very, very important, actually. And we'll actually talk about this with David as well. And then which of these risks is your institution most concerned about currently? And then which best describes your current career readiness tracking strategy? Are you using multiple tools? Do you rely on career services staff to manually do these things? Dissatisfied alumni? We've automated some tracking with tech, or we don't track students at all. And then which best describes your current, career readiness strategy? How open is your institution to leveraging AI or automation in career services? Are you already using AI and automation in career services? Are you planning to explore it in 2025? Are you interested but maybe unsure about how to start? Or are you just currently not considering it at all? And we had a few other people join. So right now we're just doing some polls to get to know everybody in the room. We greatly appreciate if everybody can participate. We're at 62% participation. We're almost there. 70%. Love that. And then what is your top priority for improving student career outcomes this year? Is it increasing student engagement? Is it tracking career preparation data? Is it improving employer relationships? Maybe enhancing alumni career support or introducing new tech solutions? How's it going, Timothy? Thank you for joining. Hey, Judy. I got some friends that went to TSU. And Colvin, thank you for joining. And then my last question, I always ask this is like, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Personal favorite, chocolate chip cookie dough. David, what's your favorite? If you eat ice cream?
Coffee, coffee,
Coffee, really?
coffee
Okay.
would be number one, and just regular coffee would be number two.
Okay, cool. Nah,
Yeah.
coffee ice cream is nice. I like coffee ice
Yep.
cream with pistachios. Add a little flavor in there. Cool. I'll give it another 30 seconds for everybody to answer the questions, and then we'll move forward into the conversation, what you guys came here for today. And then keep in mind, as I'm asking questions to David, if you have any questions for David at the end, we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end to answer any questions. Please leave your questions in the Q&A box and not the chat so it can be streamlined at the end of the fireside chat. Thank you so much. Nice. Chocolate chip cookie dough, yep. Mint chocolate chip. Nice. All right, perfect. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. That way you can see both of us, and we'll get into the questions. So, David, I appreciate you joining. Big fan of uConnect. Love everything you guys are doing. I think of you as like the OG in the higher education space. So how do you define career readiness in today's job market, and why has it become such a critical risk factor for institutions?
So I think that I think starting with sort of like why it's a critical risk factor, for institutions, I think a couple thoughts on on this front. I think probably most of the people on the call, know that sort of career advancement and economic and social mobility, more broadly, is a huge factor for why, people enroll and persist in higher education, right? And
Right.
um, if your customers, right, and students of higher education institutions really are, really are customers of those institutions, if they're telling institutions that the reason that they're enrolling is to advance their career, then being able to deliver on that, in terms of being able to provide a robust and high impact career service experience, is absolutely critical, right? There's a lot of different support and student services that institutions offer, but it's hard to find any that are sort of as important and as critical to student success, and institutional effectiveness as career services.
Right.
Obviously, there are different sort of like challenges in higher education today. A lot of the policy that's been coming from the administration is causing uncertainty and um, you know and confusion among higher ed leaders about sort of like what the future is going to look like, and how higher ed administrators can navigate that path. And then there's also, independent of that, just factors that are impacting enrollment, right? ROI is one of them, but there's also, the demographic, variables and things like that. And so being able to be very intentional about what the ROI looks like, what the career services experience looks like, what historical outcomes have been, and how prospective students can think about enrolling in your institution as a path towards, career mobility is a huge factor in, I think, drawing the right students into your institution, and doing so in a way that aligns them to a really meaningful outcome. So I think it's really important as it relates to a risk factor for schools to just continue to be proactive about, not only delivering career services, but also embedding into the institutional message, the brand narrative, and
Right.
making it part of the culture. I think on the like how you define career readiness, I think it's an interesting question. I think probably a lot of different schools have different points of view on how they think about career readiness. I think from my perspective, it's a lot about engagement with career services, right? I mean, at the end of the day,
Right.
I think a lot of students are looking for entry-level job opportunities. And I think the reality is that, students or applicants to entry-level roles don't necessarily need to be able to come in with a robust set of significant skills that are going to transform, the trajectory
Right.
of a particular organization, right? They need to be prepared. They need to be thoughtful. They need to be able to articulate their skills and value, and they need to really understand how they can, contribute to a particular organization. So I think sort of career engagement is probably the biggest factor for success as it relates to, sort of career readiness. On the engagement side, there's probably a couple of different, buckets that I might sort of think about as most important to sort of setting students up for success. I think number one, and probably most important, is just clarity about, what career pathways are out there, having the
Right.
requisite sort of exposure about, the different occupations, different roles, which ones are relevant for me, given my particular interests and backgrounds and goals as a student. And so without the exposure, all the other sort of elements are limited, right? Because the opportunity to create significant exposure, I think, is really an opportunity to inspire students to really meaningfully pursue those pathways. So that would be number one. I think number two is probably sort of combination of like skills and experiences, right? So
Right.
engagement with, course curriculum that are teaching particular skills that are important for the future of work, and then having experiences that are giving students not only more, more reinforcement of the skills that they need, but also, again, that exposure about what type of work is interesting to them, what type of work do they find motivating, where they're, what type of work are they most effective at, right? And so those experiences, I think, are also really important. Whether it's formal internships or, there's virtual job simulations, there's apprenticeships, there's job shadow programs, there's work-based learning. There's so many different types of experiences, and those are critical to helping students develop skills, clarify their understanding about different pathways, and then also be able to put them on their resume and talk about them in job interviews. And I think the last two are really um, a network, just having a network of people, right, that
Yeah, I agree.
can increase that exposure, expand that exposure. Whether it's alums, whether it's upperclassmen, whether it's just people in industry.
Right.
It could be the recruiters that are coming to campus, right? But having that network and being able to talk to different people who are on different pathways and getting the exposure there to not only what those pathways might look like, but how do I get into some of these opportunities? What's the best way to present myself for this particular role or this particular company? That's huge. And then ultimately, I think the confidence in the recruiting process is also, hugely important. So career teams offer a lot of important resources related to that, mock interviews, resume prep, and a lot of other sort of aspects of the recruiting process. Confidence going into that recruiting process is a really important factor for getting, for being competitive in those
Right.
entry level recruiting opportunities. So that's how I would sort of think about career readiness, engagement across the board. But those particular areas, I think, are really are really core to helping students set themselves up for success.
I agree. I consider myself to be a career ready graduate coming from Georgia State, and you hit it spot on. Like I was always in the career services center, networking, building relationships with career advisors, and then sometimes recruiters would just pop in randomly on campus, and I'd be the only student there, or maybe a few students there that got the exposure that most students didn't get because they weren't showing up. And I think that's what you mentioned earlier about like early career talent. When I got my job at Wells Fargo, got my job at Adobe, it wasn't because I knew finance. It was
Right.
because I did the things that didn't cost anything, showing up on time, work ethic, being like bringing the energy to the office, right? Being able to bring new, fresh ideas, new different perspectives, being curious, right? I think those intangible assets or skills are like soft skills, the things you really can't teach a lot of. I think those are the ones that make a real impact, especially for entry level graduates.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to that point, I think is a lot of times there's an emphasis on sort of like the last mile part of the of the process, right? And connecting students with employers and
Right,
recruiting, but it's really like the exposure, the beginning of the journey that is most important, because I think a lot of the elements that that you just shared about your path
right,
is a function of being motivated, being inspired
sure,
to
sure,
pursue these pathways. And the way that you can inspire students is by showing them what's out there, right? And that career doesn't necessarily have to be this intimidating topic that the students may feel like they are not ready to sort of engage in. But creating that exposure, just like in so many other facets of life, creates inspiration and motivation, and then that sort of like feeds itself. And so without being able to do that at scale, I think you get
mm,
fewer students who are engaged in the last mile
right.
aspect of the process. Um, and I think in my experience, I found that obviously limits career services impact and influence
Tremendously.
if they're not sort of as effective in getting the broad student population exposed and excited about pursuing career paths.
No, that makes total sense. So yeah, you've worked with 400 schools. I'm curious to know what the key differences you've noticed between institutions that successfully engage students with career services and those that struggle.
Um, I would say the key difference is the student of schools that have been successful. I think leadership is probably the biggest common
Mm,
thread, right?
okay.
I think um, we've seen Ivy League institutions, prestigious liberal arts colleges, and HBCUs with staff of one,
True.
be really effective, right? It really depends on leadership in the career center, but then also leadership at the highest levels, right?
Right.
The more that leadership at the highest levels recognize that students are, holding career and economic mobility as a major factor for their success, and their ROI as it relates to their investment in higher ed, the more they invest in supporting career development, not only with dollars and cents and seats on the career team, but just having it be part of the culture. And I think having it be part of the culture means that faculty, staff, are engaged in the conversation, are evangelizing career services, are supporting students with those conversations. It means that enrollment management and marketing are talking about career development to prospective students, right? It means that alumni relations are talking to alums and encouraging them to come back to campus, and mentor students and recruit students, and be just lifelong resource for students, right? So I think it's about leadership in the career center and then leadership at the highest level. Um, and that's probably in my experience the only common thread,
Mm.
versus types of institutions or other factors like that.
Okay. No, I like that. I totally agree with the leadership aspect. I think of schools, I look at it as like a business, right? So I think of students as your customer and the curriculum and the institution as the product. And I think if more leaders looked at it in that regard, I feel as though if you have students graduating in their, I mean, I think I seen a survey somewhere. It was like 54% of students go to colleges to either learn a new skill or into the workforce, right? If they're not graduating with a job in hand, with a degree in hand, but no job, that to me is a bad review, right? And as a business, I don't want bad reviews because bad reviews means less customers, right? Which really comes down to less enrollment, and we've seen a decrease in enrollment over the past year or two, across multiple institutions. But I'm thinking now it's because students are realizing that, hey, I'm paying all this tuition over the course of 4 years, and they have alternative options now to where I can go to a boot camp for 6 months. I can go, learn a trade within 3 to 12 months and go get a job that probably could give me an entry level salary. So I think it's just changing that mindset and really focusing on the customer, which is the students, and then fine tuning the product to match the students or to match your customers' desires and outcomes.
Yeah, yeah. And like I think to that end, from like a product perspective, thinking about customers, you guys are building a product
Right,
and thinking a lot
right,
about who
right.
your customers are, who your users are, and probably spending a lot of time thinking about the user experience, right?
100%.
And I
Exactly.
think there's also an element of, the schools that I have personally observed are most effective in driving engagement, spend a lot of time actually thinking about what is the student user experience throughout the entire life
Mm.
cycle, right? And how can we be proactive in making sure that we're creating a frictionless student experience as it relates to engaging with career services, which in career services is even more important than almost any other aspect of the higher ed sort of offering, because career services is like a daunting topic for students, especially those who have had limited exposure to
Very
career.
much so.
Like someone said to me the other day, they were like, "Hey, students who don't know what they want to do for their career don't use career services." Right?
That's
And
facts.
and most students don't know what they want to do for their career, right? And
That's
so
true.
thinking about how do you sort of lower the barrier to entry? How do you make it less,
Right,
how do you make engagement with career services feel less daunting, feel more inclusive to students, regardless of where they are in their sort of journey?
right.
And I think schools that really think a lot about the student user experience, um,
Are gonna win.
I think lower those barrier to entries and make it easier for students to engage. And uh, and then again, like we talked about earlier, once they start engaging, I think then there's an opportunity to create that inspiration and that motivation, and then, and then hopefully students are, proactive on their side and utilizing all the resources that institutions offer. So, yeah.
No, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, you're spot on. I think implementing it in the classroom early on, because like you said, people. I talked to like I have friends that have never been to career services departments until their senior year because they were afraid that they weren't ready to talk to a counselor because they didn't know what they wanted to do, not knowing that the counselor is there to support them to get to know what they want to do. So I think it's just, yeah, most definitely branding and messaging around how does career services engage with students, what's the purpose of career services, how students should engage, and why they're actually there. And also, I think tying it back to, hey, you're already paying for this stuff in your tuition, so you might as well use it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And then also,
like,
like, I think related to this is also like just like when you think about the student experience, there's not one type of student, obviously,
oh,
right?
sure, yes,
There's so many different types of students with different backgrounds, different circumstances. There's students who are traditional students walking around, the quad with a backpack, and and that's great. And that's sort of, I think, what a lot of folks think about when they, when they when they think about sort of like the traditional college student. But there's more adult learners, there's more hybrid students,
yep,
there's more commuter students, there's more students who are juggling courses and classes at the same time, courses and jobs at the same time, because they need to pay for college while they're attending, right? And so, like,
yes,
making sure that your career resources are accessible when they need it, right? The whole meeting students where they are 24/7, 365. Career offices are open 9 to 5, 5 days a week, 8 months a year. That's not going to change. And frankly, it
it's
shouldn't
true,
change, right? Um,
right?
but it is really important that students can access resources in a, in a sort of easy and convenient way when they want to. And when they need it. And so I think that's also a big part of the user experience conversation.
I agree. Now I do want to talk a little bit about consequences, right? Because I think consequences motivate people. So, what are the long term consequences for schools that fail to meaningfully track and engage students in career preparation that you've seen across the uConnect ecosystem and just higher ed in general?
Um, I think there's lots of examples of consequences. I think I think one of the challenges in higher ed is that oftentimes there isn't as much sort of motivation
Mm,
to flip the table and try new things, because the consequences aren't always so clear. There
mm,
are data points that link career engagement to persistence, to retention, to degree completion, to student satisfaction,
okay,
alumni loyalty, right? Like a lot of those
right,
elements, they're not necessarily uniquely tied to career services engagement, of course. There's a lot of different factors that lead to all those different important strategic, measurables and initiatives. But those do have a significant impact, um, or career service engagement does have a significant impact on, on those important elements. There's also, an important conversation around equitable access right now, given sort of like the DEI policies that are coming from the administration, and how important it is to be able to, continue to provide all students with the sort of access to the resources that they need to succeed. And I think what was interesting when we sort of started digging into this a little bit more is finding that a lot of the students that are actually impacted by some of the changes in DEI policy are actually students that use career services more than
mm,
most, right? Which
okay,
like a little bit like makes sense, right? I think a lot of the students that are impacted by some of the changes in DEI policy, not to generalize, but
right,
a lot of those students have more consequence, feel more urgency to
right,
realize an outcome from their investment in higher ed, to realize the economic and social mobility that higher ed can offer. and they have
Right.
more urgency and consequence around it, right? And so they're like, hey, like I don't know if I'm ready. I don't frankly care if I'm ready, right? I need
Right.
these career services because outcome is
Right.
really important to me, right?
Right.
And so the ability to, meaningfully engage students in career prep, I think supports all students, but can also definitely be disproportionately important to, historically underrepresented students.
Right.
That's just really critical to supporting the students that we have, and then also, being able to, tell the right story to future students that are thinking about enrolling in your institution. And then the last thing I'd say, Leander, about like consequence, the new administration is um, doesn't have a lot of it doesn't seem to have a lot of nuanced thoughts about the education industry.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and there's also, a lot of more sort of like negative uh, conversation from a policy perspective as it relates to the education space. But
Space.
one
Right.
area where I think that there is momentum, and I think that there is, um, sort of a clear point of view from the administration as it relates to higher ed, is on outcomes. They are,
Mm.
TBD on sort of like how this surfaces and when there will be, more information or, more clarity about specific programs and, resources available to institutions and things like that. But they are quite clear on the importance of tying, post-secondary education in particular to career outcomes. And, I think things are trending in a direction where there will be more federal funding and
Mm.
state funding tied to um, support for career outcomes, right? So it may not be necessarily tied to what are the exact outcomes that this institution has, but it may be tied to how much are you currently doing to support career readiness, career planning, and great outcomes, right? How many students are engaged? How many students are seeing meaningful value from the resources that you offer, right? And a lot of those, I think, elements might be, at least directionally, that seems to be the sentiment tied to funding sources in the future. I was traveling earlier this week, and somebody shared with me that in Utah, at the state level, there's a grant, the Utah Reinvestment in Career Act, that is, um, 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 that is encouraging schools to reinvest, I think, 10% of operating profits into career development initiatives,
Oh,
right?
nice.
And so there's little pockets of things like that. And I
Right.
think that like the way the conversation is generally trending, and whether we like it or not, the next,
Right.
3.9 years are going to be with this administration. And
Right.
that is their point of view, right?
True.
On sort of the role of post-secondary education. So I would look at it less as a consequence,
Mm. Okay.
more as an opportunity. But the consequence is like if it starts to come to fruition and there is funding related to career development, and you
Right.
haven't historically invested in career development, don't have a good idea of what works, what doesn't, and haven't tested, tactics and strategies on your campus, then you're going to be, playing catch up, and
Right.
that's obviously not a good place to be. So, I generally like to think about it as more of an opportunity, but of course, in the context of your question, there are consequences.
Nice. I mean, that was great. And then in what ways does insufficient career readiness data impact the institution's ability to attract employers, retain students, and then drive alumni engagement?
Um, Interesting. Well, I think on the employer side, um, on the employer side, if students aren't engaged, with career services and exploration, right? Like then when like the story that I mentioned when I sort of started uConnect, the inspiration was like I went back to campus and
Right.
was trying to hand out jobs in private equity at a state school,
Right.
which wasn't a very um, wasn't a very common thing. And students on a campus of 30,000 students, I think 3 students showed up,
That's
right? So
crazy.
that in and of itself creates like a question in the employer's mind, of course, of why am I spending my resources to come to this campus? And even if students do show up, right, are they ready? Are they thoughtful about what career path they want to pursue? Do they know what we as an employer do about our industry, what we're looking for? Are they prepared? Are they
Right.
thoughtful? Are they ready to make the most of the opportunity, right? Like schools, employers, just like schools, right, don't have unlimited budgets. And in entry level recruiting is no different. And so they have to be
Right.
selective with budgets. And, it's really important that you have not only engaged students that are showing up,
Right.
but they are showing up in a way that is going to, impress employers and, make sure that employers come back, to their, either in-person office or virtual office and say, hey, that was a great use of our time. We found some great candidates and developed a lot of good relationships with,
Relationships.
future employees, and you want to leave that impression on, on those
Right.
companies, of course. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I think data is important, man. I think data just showcases the story. And I always say my favorite quote is like, numbers don't lie, people do. So I'm a data driven person. I'm going to show you the numbers and let the numbers speak for themselves. So I think being able to track engagement from an employer standpoint, or engagement from the student side to position, hey, these are the students, we have X amount of engineering students that have done these 3 things that you're looking for to hire entry level engineering roles at PepsiCo, right? You should come recruit at Boston University. I think that's a more enticing way to approach employers. 'Cause I know a lot of schools do like sponsorships now, right? To where they're
Yep.
charging X amount of dollars to, put logos on your website or attend career fairs, come do a lunch and learn, right? If I'm selling packages like that, I'm pretty sure as an employer, I would want to see some type of data that showcases, hey, these are the students that are engaged. Here's how we ran similar events. We have testimonials from other employers that have came to our school and recruited talent in a very unique way, right? Whereas more hands-on, they might have did a lunch and learn, or maybe had an alumni come back and talk about their experience at this company that worked out for them. So I'm a big data guy. I love data because it just explains. It creates a story that's true and real.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's spot on. I think it's probably, as important, if not more important than ever, that career teams are really sort of meaningfully and proactively building relationships with employers, um, and, bringing them to campus and highlighting the employers that they want to get in front of students. I think like on the policy front, again, there's a lot of momentum also around keeping students in state,
Mm,
right? Obviously,
that's
more
true.
with public institutions, but keeping students in state. And so, like, how can we build relationships with the employers that are growing in the industries that are expanding and getting them in front of our students? And, whether you're asking them to recruit or whether you're asking them, to be a sponsor, you're asking them for their time and resources. And to your point, right, you have to be able to make the case for them to do that, to allocate their time and allocate their resources, and,
Sources, right?
data about how many students are engaged in career services and how many students are interested in their particular industry, and, things like that are really important. And then, like you said, the outcome data, right? Like, we have seen X number of students enter this industry and work for companies like yours, and that just sort of instills confidence that if they do decide to allocate time and resources, that it's going to be worth their, you know, uh, worth it for them, and they're going to see a good return on their investment as it relates to their sort of, campus recruiting budget.
Most definitely. I got maybe 2 or 3 more questions, and then after we have one question in the chat. So, what role does AI and automation play in helping schools better engage with underprepared students? And then, how can AI and automation help universities identify and engage with students who need extra support in career preparation?
Um, well, I think, AI is a technology, right? And so
Right.
like AI is just the next sort of wave of technology that is going to help, people and organizations be more efficient and more effective. I think I
Sir.
can just share an example of what we're doing on that front. I think what we find is
Yeah,
that
please do.
um, a lot of schools have, different career resources that can be hugely valuable for students, but not always specific resources tailored to particular underrepresented populations. And at the same time, we find a lot of schools are really eager and intentional in trying to provide a more personalized and curated experience for underrepresented populations. We've leveraged we've leveraged AI technology and other technologies to help sort of bring best in class content and resources from across the web into the uConnect platform, which is a virtual career center that schools can use to, of course,
Right.
engage students in career services. And so leveraging that type of technology to identify the best, career content that's out there and that is specifically tailored to first gen students or international students or, students of color or whatever underrepresented populations um, might exist on that campus, and being able to bring that content into the platform and provide sort of that, that tailored experience. And so there's ways to sort of, in that particular case, to sort of radically streamline that process in terms of like, okay, like there's a wide range of content across the web. What is the sort of content that we're looking for? How would we grade it? What is the criteria, right? And how do you sort of bring that content in at scale that meets a certain threshold, and then deliver that to our customers to be able to better support their students? And of course, technologies like AI can help make that a more efficient process.
Streamline. 100%.
Um, and I know that you guys are doing a lot on the AI front, so you probably are even more well versed on that front than I am.
Yeah, most definitely. AI is most definitely revolutionizing career services. I mean, every industry, honestly, at this point. Sales, marketing, ops, different functions in different businesses. But for us specifically, most definitely enhancing the way students interact with career services when it comes to like resumes, creating cover letters, mock interview simulations, just meeting students where they are, and providing that real time feedback similar to a career coach when they are not available. So I think it's most definitely giving a meeting student. Like I really think it's about meeting students where they are. A lot of people can't maybe come into office, might have to be only online, and they might be wanting to do a mock interview at 10 p.m. and you're just not there. Not saying that your role is most definitely important when it comes to feedback, and giving comments and criticisms on that mock interview or whatever assets they might be creating. Um, but I think it's most definitely about just putting the students first because they are your customer.
Yeah, maybe just like so also just like um, just like advice, I guess, as it relates to AI. I think there's like, AI is very shiny, and
Yes,
it's very
very.
exciting. And I think what I've seen is a little bit of like, hey, like we got to use AI. And I think
That's true too.
my recommendation or my advice to folks, if they were to ask, is, your initiatives and your goals shouldn't change, right?
Right.
They should be the same. Um,
Exactly.
and there may be opportunities to leverage AI to sort of be more efficient and more effective in
Yes.
doing what you were going to do otherwise, right? And so I think versus like, hey, I want to use AI, it's like, hey, I want to provide mock interviews to students at 10 p.m., right?
Exactly.
Maybe there's an opportunity to leverage AI to do that because I ain't going to be there at 10 p.m., right? And so
Exactly.
um uh just sort of thinking about AI in the context of what are your sort of like organic goals, even before the AI conversation. And now there's just, I think, an emergence of that technology and opportunities to leverage that to again be more effective, and especially for for small career teams, which represent of course most career teams. So um, just thinking about it in that context, I think helps be narrow and helps make sure that whatever you're using AI for is accretive to the to the strategic goals that your team and your institution have.
Yeah, they're already set out in place, right? Just to make
Yeah.
things more efficient and streamlined. No,
Yeah.
I totally agree. And if there's one crucial takeaway higher education leaders should implement from our discussion today, what would it be?
Um, just that, like, just to keep, um, I think to keep in perspective that career services is far more important to student success and institutional effectiveness than sometimes is made clear by leadership on some campuses.
Yes,
And it can be a challenging environment to work in, especially now with, with some of the recent changes. But I'm a big believer in, um, just being patient and being persistent about what is in the best interest of, in this case, your students. And career service is undoubtedly core to what your students need. And I think keep um, being creative and proactive, and thinking about how you can better serve students and push the envelope with the tactics and strategies that you are using, and just continue to make the case. Um,
right,
Even if you feel like you're not going to get a yes, trying
right.
to make the case puts you and your initiatives on the radar of senior leadership, and they're going to remember that, because the next time you go to make the case, they'll be like, "Oh, well, this is a continuation of what we talked about last time." And so, even trying to make the case and getting a no is far more valuable than than not sort of putting yourself out there and
Out there.
asking for the resources that you need to support your students and support your institution. So, um, yeah, I
Not
that would be the overarching piece,
takeaway.
if you ask me. Yeah.
Nah, I agree with that. Closed mouths don't get fed. Speak up for what you believe in, speak up for what you need, and make a viable case, like data, research. Like I said, data does a lot. People do. Like, yeah, you cannot deny data. Like, these are facts. If I see career readiness engagement increasing, why would you not want to invest in that? If I'm doing certain things that are working to help students get outcomes, you have a viable case to go to senior leadership. Like, hey, we need to put more money behind this to expand this, right? To help our students actually succeed and become career ready and be able to graduate with not only a degree in hand, but with a job and into the workforce. Because at the end of the day, I like to tie things back to business goals. As an institution, they do care about enrollment, right? And the higher your institutional rankings are, the more outcomes you get, the more positive feedback, your customer testimonies, your customers are leaving. You can advertise that to students that are looking to gain higher education, or looking to attend college or universities across the U.S. or international.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just on the on the making the case front, I think also, when you're making when folks are making the case, again, even if you end up getting a no, there's a lot of value in putting your vision and your initiatives on the radar of senior leadership. If you get a no, or if you get a not right now, it's just important to also follow up and say, okay, like, can you give me some feedback on why it isn't a priority? What would need to be true for
Right,
it to be a priority, right?
right,
What would success look like from your perspective, you know, to a provost or to a dean, or, to a VP of student affairs, or whoever it might be, right?
right.
Um, and just get more clarity, right? More feedback about, like, how can I make sure that I'm positioning this in a way that is gonna land well next time? Um, and there's a lot of value that can come from that, again, even if that immediate sort of ask doesn't result in resources.
No, I appreciate that. I know Brandon has a question specifically to that, and then I'll ask the other two questions. He was like, how would you suggest career services teams engage with leadership to make the case for more investment? I think you kind of just touched on it a little bit just now, based on how they get to know and asking for feedback. But if you want to add anything else, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say, like, just like positioning it in the context of of the institution's strategic goals,
Right,
and whoever it is that you're um talking to or asking for support from, what are their strategic goals? So I think it's really dangerous to make a proposal or to make an ask without having a lot of clarity about what that person's top priorities are and how they are
100%.
currently sort of like pursuing those opportunities. I had a conversation with a public school in Ohio earlier this week, who said everything on this campus starts with enrollment, right?
Mm,
Um, and this person has spent a lot of time with the VP of marketing and the VP of enrollment management, trying to understand what's working, what's not, what their goals are. And we work together to sort of create a proposal that positions a pretty significant investment in career services that would be directly beneficial to the marketing team and the enrollment management team in improving inquiries and applications. And so he's not sort of in that case presenting, hey, I want this, career services initiative. It's like, hey, I can be helpful to the thing that matters most to the institution, and here's how. And so I think in terms of like how to position career services, I think it's more how to support what is most important at the institution, because a lot of schools are, thin with regard to resources and budget, and they have to sort of, be shrewd and be selective about where they, invest their resources. And so if you can present resources, programs, initiatives in that context, you're going to probably find a lot more success. And so starting with lots of
right.
questions, right? Understanding what strategies and what goals matter most, who's working on them, what's working, what's not, what success looks like, and where you can be, most helpful to that.
No, I agree. That was phenomenal. And I don't know if I read on uConnect's blog or not, but I think you might have a blog on how to like talk to senior leadership or not. If not, I'll try to find it, or if you don't have it, I might create one, because I think that's a very great topic on like how to present your thoughts about career services to senior leadership and
Yeah,
higher ed.
our marketing team has done a really great job of
Okay, cool.
creating a lot of content
Yes,
um, that has, sort of been really important for informing career leaders on how to make the case for budget,
right.
how
Yep.
to, and how to also pursue a lot of other best practices. So there's a lot of good stuff on our blog for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I thought. Perfect. Let me go to the first question from Catherine. I think it's Olia. Let me know in the chat if I'm saying that right. If you're still here. How do you recommend working towards faculty buy-in in regards to career services? Faculty ideology leans towards education for the sake of learning. You see that question in the chat?
Uh, is it in the chat? How do you?
The Q&A box. I'm sorry. Do you have access to that or no?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, cool.
I mean, that's a good question. I think that my experience is sometimes when there are faculty who who feel strongly about sort of education for the sake of learning, it's tough to get them off that
It
hill. I
is.
think I do think a couple of things that I might offer up. One is faculty, whether they believe that education is for the sake of learning or otherwise, they want to help students, right? And so if a student comes to them and is interested in learning more about career pathways that are related to the coursework that they're learning, or the projects that they're participating in, they want to be able to help those students. So making it really easy for those faculty members to be able to support students in that moment, um, I think is absolutely critical. And just being really effective in your communication to sort of help them realize, the different use cases the students might come to them with, and how to leverage the content and data and information that the Career Center has to support students in that moment. I think there's also probably an opportunity to sort of leverage there's a lot more labor market data in higher ed than there was 5 years ago, which is great. And I think there's an opportunity to sort of help, sort of as a career leader, be the authority on campus about what the future of work looks like, and help
Mm,
faculty across campus understand, what are the skills in demand from different employers in different industries, and how they can take, the syllabus that they're that they have in their class, or the coursework that they're delivering to students, and how does that translate to skills that employers need? I think there's an element of sort of elevating the importance of that coursework by tying it to skills that are in demand from employers in different industries. And so being able to lead that discussion and, go to faculty and say, hey, like, this course is critically important for our students because, data science is a growing industry, and, these three skills that are seemingly, the students are seemingly coming away from after having taken this course, are definitely growing in demand. And so it sort of elevates the importance of their work, and maybe there's an opportunity to sort of help create more allies in the faculty, by leaning into some of that labor market data.
I appreciate that. And then Steven, he said a lot of employers, especially larger ones, use ranking and scoring products, sometimes powered by AI, to help them focus their efforts on candidates which the software deems to be the highest quality. Given that the employers never hire candidates ranked as poor quality by the software, how do those employers actually know if the software is working well? That's a pretty intense question.
That's a good question. And I gotta be honest, man. I mean, like, I'm not like, I spend 98% of my time sort of thinking about the career center, the institution, less
Right,
about the employer side.
right,
Um, um, I don't even have a good answer to that question. Hopefully they're being diligent. If they're
right,
relying on the scoring system to make decisions about new hires and the future of their workforce, hopefully they're diligent. Hopefully they're have ways to sort of like reinforce that those are the right grades, or the right score.
right.
Um, and But there's no substitute for a really good interview and a really good sort of manual in person, or at least live, uh,
Right,
employee screen, right?
100%.
And I think spending time with prospective employees, candidates, is just really important, right? To get to know people before you make a decision. So
Yes.
hopefully there aren't that many companies that are relying too heavily on a scoring system like that. But there are definitely other people who are better equipped to answer that question.
I appreciate that. I think from a product perspective, like we have scoring mechanisms. I think just understanding what the criteria of that scoring mechanism is, if you are using that product, is very important as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then Arham, he said that what would be a good roadmap to engage career services leadership teams to consider investing into AI platforms for improving operational efficiency for their workforce? What would be a
Uh,
good roadmap to engage career services leadership teams to investing into AI platforms?
um,
Or improving
yeah,
operational efficiency.
that's a good question. I don't know that I have a roadmap. Again, I think as it relates to the
Right,
AI conversation, I think it's like, what are you trying to achieve, and how can AI help you be more efficient and more effective? And so I would be careful about sort of like seeking a roadmap to implement AI, and more seeking a roadmap to do X, and maybe do X given that I have really limited staff capacity and a large student body that is very diverse and has lots of different, backgrounds and interests and needs, and sort of like the challenge related to to serving that population with a small staff, right, might obviously lead to implementing technologies like AI that can help be more efficient. But um, I would think about a roadmap to deliver on the strategies and the goals that you have, and then given the other sort of variables and circumstances that are at play, what are the sort of like solutions that are most relevant for me and my team and my students and my circumstance. So I certainly do not have an AI roadmap. But you can ask
No,
ChatGPT. I'm sure they have one.
No, I appreciate that. Well, no, man, David, I really appreciate you joining, man. I want you to leave a few words about uConnect if anybody's interested in learning more. I'll give the floor to you.
Um, um,
I'm also going to drop your information in the chat as well to connect with you on LinkedIn and uConnect's website.
yeah, I mean, my email is where are we here? Put my email um in
In
the
the
chat.
chat.
uConnect is a all-in-one virtual career center. And like I said, we work with about 400 college universities to help them consolidate the full range of career resources and data and information into one single place. And the goal is to sort of, radically improve engagement with the resources that schools already have, and doing so from the very beginning of a student's journey, ideally before enrollment, but definitely from the very beginning of their time on campus all the way to and through completion. We spend most of our time thinking about how to help career leaders sort of scale their impact and influence and elevate the role of career services on campus. So if those things are relevant and interesting to folks on the call, then feel free to shoot me an email. And our website is gouconnect.com. And I appreciate you, Leander, and the good work that y'all are doing at WriteSea. And I'll echo what you said at the beginning, everybody who joined the call. I know that there's a lot going on and a lot of competing priorities, so I appreciate taking some time to join us, and hopefully it was a good use of everybody's time.
I appreciate you, David. And yeah, a little bit about WriteSea. We're all-in-one career services platform, streamlining career coaching, resume building, cover letter generation, mock interviews, and salary negotiation for students, helping them become career ready and improve their outcomes. If you want to learn more, we'll drop this is WriteSea.com in the chat. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn as well. We'd love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. We're hosting fireside chats every month or workshops every month. So we're going to look out for an email coming from myself probably the next week or two about our next upcoming workshop or fireside chat. I think it's gonna be pretty interesting. Hopefully, I'm thinking about getting a couple of presidents on the call or a president from a university. So I think that'll be pretty interesting. And
Yeah.
then last but not least, we have a few announcements. So if you didn't catch our last fireside chat with Lakeisha Hughes last month, it was really, really insightful about how Georgia State embeds career readiness into the classroom. I'll drop the recap blog in the chat as well. Please check that out. The video is already on YouTube as well. And I got some different resources that Lakeisha shared. I think the GSU syllabus is on that blog as well if you want to gain more insight into how GSU is actually implementing career readiness in the classroom for students to become career ready. And then we will also be, I know Brandon, my co-founder and CEO will be in San Diego attending the AI show April 5th through the 7th. So if you're in the California area, oh, and Brandon's also here. He just dropped his LinkedIn in the chat as well. So yeah, if you're in the San Diego area, please connect with Brandon. He's actually doing a 10-minute live demo. And I think the event is actually free to attend. So it's one of the biggest higher ed tech conferences every year. So he'll be doing a 10-minute demo at the conference as well. So yeah, please connect with Brandon in person. We'd love to meet you guys in person if you're in San Diego area. If you're not in San Diego area, but you're in the West Coast, we'd love for you to attend the event. It's free to attend. And then post webinar, you'll have you should after I close it down, you should see a pop up with the survey. Please take 2 minutes to fill out the survey so we can get some feedback on our future events. And then let us know if you found the fireside chat with David valuable as well. Just love to create that feedback loop so we can always keep improving events like these. And if you want to connect with myself, this is my information, my email, phone number, and then follow WriteSea on social as well. Connect with us on LinkedIn, and we'll see you guys on the next fireside chat next month. Probably will be on April 24th, but I'll send out an email with logistics and everything probably within the next week or so. Any last words, David, you have?
No, man,
Well, sir.
appreciate you continuing to push the conversation forward. And look forward to continued collaborations. We'll see everybody
Yes,
soon.
sir. Sir. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.